She stepped onto the yacht wearing a simple white dress, sandals too plain for the occasion, and a quiet confidence that no one seemed to notice. The champagne was flowing, the laughter was loud, and the luxury around her was blinding, but so were the stairs. Whispers floated in the salty air. Who invited her? Is she lost? Someone even laughed aloud, nudging their friend as she walked by. But she just smiled, calm, focused, watching. No one there knew her story. Not the influencers snapping selfies. Not the businessmen talking loud about their latest deals. Certainly not the woman who deliberately accidentally spilled a drink near her feet. To them, she was just some outsider who didn't belong. Another face they'd forget by morning. But what they didn't know was that she wasn't here to impress them. She was here to change everything, because just 2 weeks ago, that very yacht, the one they were partying on, had been quietly listed for sale, hidden in a deal only the rich whisper about. She had been waiting for this moment for months. Not for revenge, not for attention, but to remind them, and maybe herself, what real power looks like when it doesn't need to be loud. As the party raged on, she stepped away from the crowd, pulled out her phone, and made one short call. Few moments later, the yacht's captain received a message. Then the crew, then silence. Faces began to shift, confusion, unease, and when the captain finally approached her with a quiet, "Ma'am, is everything in order?" the laughter stopped. But that was only the beginning, because what she was about to do next, no one on that yacht could have seen coming. She nodded slowly at the captain's question, not saying much, just enough to keep everyone guessing. People were watching now, their fake smiles fading into puzzled looks. A few of them started whispering again, but this time their tones were nervous, not mocking. Something had shifted. The air felt different, heavier, and she hadn't even said a word to most of them. Just a few months earlier, she was sitting in a small rented apartment, scrolling through pictures of the same people now standing only feet away. They called themselves elites, jet-setting, yacht-hopping, always flaunting what they had. She wasn't jealous, she was curious. She had grown up with nothing, built herself quietly through sharp decisions, long nights, and patience. And when her tech startup finally sold, she didn't run toward luxury. She waited. She studied. She learned how power works in rooms like this. She had seen this exact yacht on a luxury auction site, hidden in plain sight. Owned by a man too deep in debt to admit he was sinking. She bought it through a shell company, letting her name remain buried. And now, standing on her own deck, surrounded by the same people who once treated her like she didn't exist, she realized this wasn't about proving anything. It was about taking back space she was always told she didn't belong in. Still, she hadn't said it out loud. She hadn't revealed a thing. But the way the crew began subtly treating her differently, the quiet nods, the sudden respect was enough to stir unease. A woman in a red dress approached her, trying to smile. "So, are you with the owner?" she asked. She just looked at her and smiled again, because the truth was about to surface. And once it did, nothing would ever be the same again. The woman in red didn't walk away. She lingered, waiting for a reply, maybe thinking she could pull some information from a casual chat. "I mean, you must know him pretty well," she added with a nervous laugh, glancing around as if hoping someone else would join in. But no one did. The others were watching too, but from a distance now. Something about the quiet confidence in her silence was unsettling. She turned to face the woman fully. "I know him very well," she said calmly. "He's no longer involved." Then she walked away, leaving the woman blinking, confused. The captain stood nearby, subtly observing. His posture had changed. Less casual, more alert. He knew, at least part of it, but he was waiting for a cue, and she hadn't given it yet. In the background, a group of men leaned on the railing, whispering. One of them, James, had recognized her. They'd crossed paths years ago at a pitch meeting he'd laughed through, not knowing the app she was building would soon be worth more than his entire firm. He hadn't put the pieces together until it showed in his face. Sweat dotted his forehead despite the ocean breeze. "It's her," he muttered. "The one we passed on." Another subplot stirred below deck. Sophia, a junior crew member, had been following her from the start, not with suspicion, but curiosity. She'd recognized her from a small article in a tech magazine months ago. She quietly messaged her brother, a financial reporter, check, who owns the Sea Ember now. Something's going on. Tension rippled beneath the surface. No big announcements. No dramatic confrontations, just a steady unraveling of control. She hadn't revealed herself fully, but piece by piece, the truth was bleeding through, and they all knew it. Something was coming. The music thumped on in the background, but the energy had shifted. People weren't dancing anymore. They were watching, pretending to sip their drinks while keeping her in their peripheral vision. Conversations had turned quiet, cautious. Even the influencer crowd, always loud and full of bravado, had gone unusually still. A storm was coming. And they all felt it, but none of them knew what form it would take. James stepped forward, forcing a casual tone. "So, you're investing in yachts now?" Kay asked, trying to sound amused. She didn't answer right away, just tilted her head slightly. The moment stretched. "Let's just say," she said finally, "I no longer need invitations to parties like this." Her voice was calm, but the meaning hit hard. A few heads turned. Someone gasped softly. Sophia, the crew member, emerged from below deck, phone in hand, eyes wide. She had found the headline. Mysterious tech investor acquires $12 million luxury super yacht Sea Ember in quiet deal. She showed it to another crew member, who passed it to the next. In minutes, the truth traveled faster than any official announcement. Murmurs became full-on whispers, and whispers turned into panic beneath practiced smiles. The captain approached once again, now fully composed. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "would you like me to inform the guests of the change in ownership?" She looked at him, expression unreadable, then slowly turned to face the entire party. Silence settled like fog. Phones buzzed in pockets. The online article had gone live. Someone in the back checked their screen and read it aloud, voice shaking slightly. She bought the yacht. The crowd froze. No one laughed now. And in that final breath before she spoke, before everything tipped over the edge there, was only one question hanging in the air. What was she going to do with all of them now? Before she could speak, a sharp chime rang out from the captain's radio. He turned slightly, listening to the message in his earpiece. His eyes narrowed. "Ma'am," he said lowly, "there's a secondary vessel approaching. Not on the guest list, no prior clearance." A few crew members exchanged glances. That wasn't normal not for a party like this, especially with international waters just ahead. The guests stirred uneasily, sensing something was off. She didn't flinch. She simply asked, "How far out?" The captain responded, "About 3 minutes." Her calm expression didn't change, but now her mind was racing. She hadn't planned this part. The Sea Ember was under her control, but the waters were still unpredictable, and someone else clearly knew she'd be here tonight. Sophia looked up from her phone again. "The article's already been picked up by financial blogs," she whispered. "Comments say a former owner might try to challenge the sale. Something about hidden debts and offshore ties." Her stomach dropped. The man she'd quietly bought the yacht from Vince Rourke was known for dirty deals and disappearing acts. She had believed he was gone, desperate to sell. But what if he wasn't? As the unfamiliar boat came into view, tension thickened. Guests began shifting away from the railing. James looked visibly shaken now, You didn't just buy a yacht, he said quietly. You stepped into something bigger. The boat slowed, anchoring dangerously close. A man in a dark suit stood. At the bow, arms crossed, staring straight at her. No words. No greetings. And just like that, her quiet takeover became something far more dangerous. This wasn't just a luxury party anymore. It was a power play, and whatever was about to happen next, it would test whether she truly owned the yacht. Or if it was about to be taken back. The man on the nearby boat finally boarded. No permission asked. He moved like he still owned the place, head high, eyes locked on her. Vince Rourke, alive, confident, and somehow smiling. Quite the party, he said smoothly. You always did know how to make a statement. The crowd parted, stunned. Unsure if they were witnessing a reunion or a confrontation. She stayed silent, calm, even as her mind ran through every possible move. You think you own this yacht? He asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. You bought a shell. The real paperwork, the offshore files. I never signed the final release. The tension shattered into panic. Guests murmured, backing away. Even the crew hesitated. Vince pulled a folder from his jacket. This, he said, waving it, says I still have controlling interest. And, if you want it, we renegotiate. Then, from behind her, Sophia stepped forward. Actually, she doesn't need to. All eyes turned. That article you saw, she continued. My brother published it because he found the transfer files signed, time-stamped, authenticated. Through 2 international firms. Right? Your name was blacked out for legal reasons. You signed it, Vince. It's over. Vince's face changed. Rage flickered for a second, then disappeared behind a forced grin. Well, he said coldly, enjoy your boat. He turned and left, the tension he brought vanishing with him. The guests were stunned. Some still couldn't believe what they'd witnessed. But just as things settled, a small notification popped up on her phone. A news alert. Tech mogul's secret yacht purchase triggers SEC investigation into former owner's assets. She stared at the screen, then looked out toward the water. The yacht was hers now completely. But the ripple she caused had only just begun. And somewhere in the chaos, she realized. This was never just about a party. The sun dipped low on the horizon as the party thinned out. Some guests left quietly, others stayed just long enough to act like they had always respected her. But she noticed who truly shifted, the few who now looked at her with something different in their eyes. Not fear, not envy. Just quiet respect. James didn't say much when he left, only nodded, as if finally understanding what she had become. Sophia stood nearby, the soft breeze catching her hair. That was wild, she said, still trying to process it all. You really did it. She smiled back. You helped, she replied. Sometimes it just takes one person noticing what others don't. They both looked out at the water, where Vince's boat had vanished into the dark. The Sea Ember was hers legally, publicly, and without question. The sea investigation into Vince's offshore accounts had already begun, and it was clear that yacht sale wasn't the only thing he'd been hiding. That part was no longer her battle. She had played her move. Clean, silent, and impossible to ignore. Later, as the last of the crew finished cleaning up, she walked the deck alone. Not to admire the luxury, but to breathe it in. She wasn't here for status. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here because she belonged. And now, no one could say otherwise. This story wasn't just about a yacht party or a flashy twist. It was about transformation, about a woman who had once been laughed at, overlooked, dismissed, and who had quietly built everything they said. She couldn't. She didn't need to prove anything anymore. The headlines would fade. The whispers would stop. but the lesson would stay. Never underestimate someone who moves in silence, because sometimes the quietest in the room ends up owning.